Welcome to X Gaming World. Today, we are going through some of the best zombie games with great graphics and a good storyline. Up first, Days Gone. Days Gone is a third-person action-adventure game set in the post-apocalyptic open world. A virus has decimated the globe, turning a large portion of the humanity into violent zombie-like creatures called as the Freakers. Players can lure swarmers towards other enemies, causing the two groups to fight one another. The player controls Deacon, an outlaw bounty hunter who prefers life on the road to wilderness encampments. The game is set in an open world in the Pacific Northwest. Players can freely explore the world on foot or using a motorcycle. As players explore the world, they must collect valuable resources and components for crafting weapons and supplies. In addition to the main quests, the game has a number of side objectives which include clearing freaker nests, rescuing hostages, clearing enemy camps, capturing bounty targets, and restoring power to nearer checkpoints. Next up, Resident Evil 4. It is a remake of the 2005 game of the same name. The player controls the protagonist Leon S. Kennedy from a third-person perspective. The main enemies are violent villagers referred to as Los Ganados, which means the cattle in Spanish. Unlike the other franchise traditional zombies, Los Ganados can dodge, wield weaponry like chainsaws and projectile weapons, and are capable of working collectively and communicating with each other. The villagers' leaders may transform into grotesque monstrous forms to do a battle with the player when encountered. Other prominent enemies include the Regenerators, a type of mutated humanoid creature with potent regenerative abilities, the troll-like El Gante, and the gigantic sea creature Del Lago. Dying Light 2. It's a game about zombies where the mankind had to seek refuge in the last few remaining settlements. The virus has won and the civilization has fallen back to the Dark Ages. The city, one of the last human settlements, is on the brink of collapse. You can use your agility and combat skills to survive and reshape the world. Your choices will matter. Bound by no ethics or rules, the protagonist has no choice but to start looking for his long-lost sister. You can build your own squad and come face to face with the strangers and have intense shootouts. During the day, most of the enemies are in hiding, but as the night falls, monsters crawl out of the gloomy interiors. The game has excellent graphics and you will thoroughly enjoy it if you are a horror game fanatic. Up next, Zombie Army 4 Dead War. It is a third-person game. It is set in the year 1946 after the events of the Zombie Army trilogy. 1 year after Adolf Hitler was defeated by the resistance and banished to hell. Even though the hellmouth that the Hitler opened was closed, the zombie menace continued, with innumerable number of Nazi dead, overwhelming and pushing the Allies out of Germany and back into territories such as France and Italy. Without a leader, most of the living dead are weak and can easily be destroyed as long as their numbers are low. But the rumors spread about a cult ensuring that the horde has some cohesion. Most of the known world is now referring to the conflict against the zombie menace as the Dead War. Next up, Back 4 Blood. It is a first-person shooter developed by Turtle Rock Studios and published by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. In the game's primary player versus environment game modes, players join a 4-person shooting team of post-apocalypse survivors called Cleaners who must fight their way through levels populated by zombie-like monsters called the Ridden. Teammates are either controlled by the other players or AI bots depending on matchmaking preferences and player availability. A new feature of Back 4 Blood is cards. At the start of each level, players need to build their deck with cards that adjust various elements of gameplay such as modifying the player's health, damage and stamina. World War Z. It is a cooperative third-person shooter game in which 4 players fight against massive hordes of zombies in 7 locations, including New York, Jerusalem, Moscow, Tokyo, Marseille, Rome, and Kamchatka. Players can choose from 7 classes. The Gunslinger specializes in range, the Hellraiser specializing in explosive, the Fixer which is an engineer, a Medica who is a healer, the Slasher who specializes in melee, the Exterminator who specializes in crowd control, and the Drone Master who specializes in offensive support drones. State of Decay 2. It is a zombie survival game which has an emphasis on scavenging for items, in which gameplay is experienced from a third-person view. The game is set in an open-world environment and features cooperative gameplay with up to 3 other players. The player can choose from several locations to build a base, then reinforce and improve it with various facilities like watchtowers, gardens, sleeping quarters, kitchens, workshops, medical bays, etc. to help keep survivors safe and healthy. Part of the game is balancing the use of resources, food, medicine, ammunitions, and construction materials. They can be obtained by scavenging or trading with NPCs.
And realize no one gets a second chance.
How will you find the strength to carry on?
Next up, Killing Floor 2. It is a first-person shooter game that can be played alone and cooperatively with up to 6 players. The game is based on events from Killing Floor 1, in which the biotech firm, the Ryzen, attempted to create military clones and was hijacked by an insane researcher who unleashed the clones across the UK. The clones have now rapidly spread across Europe, paralyzing the response from the European Union. In Killing Floor 2, taking place a month after the first game, the outbreak has spread beyond Europe, causing governments to collapse and communication systems to fail. The gameplay consists of players fighting through waves of zombie-like specimens known as Zeds. Up next, 7 Days to Die. It is an early access survival horror game. The game's events happen during aftermath of a nuclear Third World War that destroyed an extremely large part of the world except for some areas such as the fictional county of Arizona. The player is a survivor of the war who must survive by finding shelter, food and water, as well as scavenging supplies to fend off the numerous zombies hinted to be the consequences of nuclear fallout, a new strain of flu, or both that populate Arizona. Next up, The Last of Us Part 2. It is also an action-adventure game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for exclusive PlayStation 4. The plot has been set 5 years after The Last of Us. The game focuses on 2 playable characters in a post-apocalyptic United States whose lives intertwine. Ellie, who sets out in revenge for a murder, and Abby, a soldier who becomes involved in a conflict between her militia and a religious cult. The game uses third-person perspective. The player must fight human enemies and cannibalistic zombie-like creatures with firearms, improvised weapons, and stealth.